This review is of the Corsair iQ 5000X RGB mid-tower PC case. As you can see, it comes shipped with 3 RGB fluid dynamic or hydrodynamic bearing fans, and it's got glass side paneling and front paneling and top paneling, and on the back it's got a combination of glass and mesh for filtration. There's filter underneath here for filtration here. There's also same on top here, and that means that it's got protection from too much dust getting inside the case. On the back, this is an output fan area that you can put a 120 or 140 millimeter fan. You can either put on the front and top, you can either put 3 120 millimeter or 2 140 millimeter fans. On the back, you can put on the back side, I should say, you can put 3 120 millimeter fans for a total of 8 or 10 fans, depending on what you choose. They don't have to be Corsair, although Corsair would like you to believe they have to be. In addition, this area is blocked off. You can see you can replace this with a scoop that goes down here, so you can fit an all-in-one cooler in this area, although that does make it very difficult because hidden behind here is a 2-bay hard disk drive case, and you can't easily get that in there with a power supply unless the power supply is small. I managed to get mine in here with a Corsair RM850X power supply, but I could not plug it in and have it screwed into place. So it's mounted partially, just basically sitting there. As you can see, there's this panel here that actually shunts air from the rear panels where you've got the place for the fans, and blows it against the motherboard, and that's good. However, you have to put some of your cabling through the holes that you can kind of see back there, and that's not good because that actually interferes with the air going through there. You can see a nice ventilation area here for heat rising off of the power supply and hard disk drive case. Underneath the case, you have a filter, which is really hard to show you this, but hold on. There is a filter here that filters the air going into the power supply, which you can see mounted right there. You can easily access the top, front, and sides of this because the top, they're just held in place with clips, and the front same. The back are held in place with, sorry, not the back. Both sides are held in place with 2 thumb screws. This side is held in place with 1, 2, 3 slot and tab positions. So it's very easy to get inside of the front. Also in the back, behind the glass/mesh panel, there is a metal door. And as you can see, all of these slot holes are protected with coarse mesh, so there's more airflow, but unfortunately, the size of all this mesh is large enough that smaller insects, including ants, small cockroaches, bed bugs, etc., will be able to get inside of your case. If you pay attention here, you're going to see that the mesh here in the back and on the front is small enough that it's really good for filtration, although the best mesh is this one and the one on the bottom there. Those are fine. These are kind of a medium-ish. And they're easy to remove. Let me just show you. You can take off this panel, and then there's this, oh my God, stupid piece of junk phone. I'm sorry, this is not cooperating with me. Okay, so there is a little plastic-looking yellow tab there. You try to grab a hold of that thing, and then you can Just pull it off, and you can see there are plastic strips holding it in place. So it's really easy to take off and put back on. I find that repositioning the glass is a little bit tricky sometimes if you don't do it exactly right. On the front case, other case at the top here, you have a reset button. You have a RCA jack for microphone and or headset, or you've also got a USB-C 3.0 or 3.2 maybe it is, C connection type, as well as two USB 3.1 I think, or maybe 3.2 for these. I don't remember. And this RGB, actually it's LED. There's an LED in here. When the computer is in sleep mode, it will flash on and off. So you've got all these connections. So that's really nice because it gives you this extra stuff in the front. Always nice to be able to plug things in. Definitely you want to have ample space between any walls or other barriers that can reduce airflow. Also, please note that the space between the glass panel and the mesh is pretty small. I'm not sure if it's actually sufficient to allow enough airflow to get to those fans when they're on max. Now you can listen and barely hear them even when I put the camera right there. So it's pretty nice in terms of quietness. This is overall, I really like this case. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 slots, plus over here 2 additional slots if you want to run a cable from whatever they connect to, whatever port they're connected to these cards over here. You can plug them in right there with the cables connecting on the bottom of the card. Now, it says this is a graphics card slot. So, yeah, in theory, it's a graphics card slot, but unless you've got a blower fan that uses the port here as the place where it blows out the heat, or it's not going to be possible. I have on my computer. Let me see if I can show you my card. My card is gigantic, and it takes up so much space in here. There's absolutely no way that I can mount this right here. I tried, actually. And if you notice, there's that bar running along there. That's a support bar that keeps it from bending and stuff like that. That bar actually goes across 4 of the thumb screws that are inside here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but if you look right there, it goes across all those. There's no way to install it with that bar supporting it. You'd have to make something else to support it between the card itself and this case area here. And this is the scoop I mentioned if you want to have an all-in-one cooler in here. So you can see though that the cabling is pretty good in the front. You don't see a lot of cables. Of course, the consequence is it does restrict your options in certain ways that a case that doesn't have concealment of cables doesn't have that problem. So if I tried to mount this card here on this double port here, number one, the support bar would not be usable because the support bar can't come out of the holes and mount across two thumb screws when it needs 4 thumb screws for full support. Number two, it's not going to be a possibility also because of the distance between the glass panel and all those 3 fans there is like maybe that much, maybe like half an inch or less. So it would impede the airflow too much and probably cause your graphics card to overheat and throttle, or worst case scenario, die. So I would definitely recommend, if you're planning to mount a graphics card or other card here, it should be a card that can get adequate airflow some other way than having front mounted fans near the glass panel here. And So let's see, is there what else? Okay, so we can also see that this is a very large mid-tower case. You can get anywhere from an ITX motherboard up to an eATX motherboard in here. Now, this is an there's one thing, if you notice here, there are some holes down there. Those are for standoffs for the ATX, which is what I've got in my case. And you have to move the standoffs from those positions there, the 3 positions along there, and put them in the mini or micro positions that are up higher to fully support your motherboard. One of the nice things about this is the standoff that's right there. I don't know if you can see that very well. There we go. So there's a one right there, and that's actually a post. So once you get the motherboard slid into place here where the porthole is for all of the accessories of your motherboard, you'll be able to then put it into place with the post, and then you can screw it all down. This does come with a lot of hardware. There are lots of screws and washers and Velcro straps. You got so many Velcro straps to aid in the cabling of this case, and that's really nice. Let's see. Now from here you can see that the back door that conceals the whole area back here. I'm not going to open this up because it's a pain in the butt to get in there because I've got all these cables in the way. But basically this conceals all of the cabling. It also conceals the power supply, the hard disk drive, 2-bay hard disk drive case. And there are 2 control modules mounted here and here. This one's PWM for fans, power management. And this one's the RGB controller for the fans. And then you have to run a SATA cable from the power supply to connect to those 2 things. And that is not documented. In fact, there's nothing documented about those cores. I had to figure it out. Partially I figured it out by myself, and partially I figured it out with the help of a Corsair tech support agent who didn't himself know about it. And so together we managed to suss it figure it out. But this is mounted on pin hinges, so you can just lift up the whole metal door and turn it out this way and lift it up and remove it for easier access. There's so much space in the front that, except for mounting maybe a large tower cooler, in which has to, oh my God, this phone is driving me nuts. There we go. Sorry. Except for if you have to install a large tower cooler on the motherboard. What the heck? Let me rephrase that. If you're going to put together this case with your parts and you want to, say, install a large tower cooler for your PSU that has a back plate that mounts on the bottom of the motherboard, you would want to install the CPU and that cooler first before mounting it in the case. Now you could actually install everything, almost everything onto the case. Onto the motherboard before installing it into the case. And that would be preferable because it's going to give you more space than what even the case can provide. However, you don't actually have to. You could just lie down the case once that air tower cooler is in place, and then go ahead and add everything else onto the motherboard. All right, I decided, you know what, it's not too hard to open this up for you. So I'm going to show you what you can see in what you'll see once you purchase this item. Sorry, it's kind of a bit messy, but it is what it is. Okay, so this is the PWM fan controller. This is the RGB controller. This little area here is the accessories tray, which I believe is removable. Again, I think this should be over here, but I don't know why it isn't, and there are no mounting holes that match the screw configurations on this little module, so I can't put it over here. But they give you 1, 2, 3 pre-installed Velcro straps, and then for the rest of it, I added these straps on this pre-existing channel over here. Here are the 3 2.5-inch card SSDs for SATA that you can either mount here on the back, or you can put 2 of them on that vent above the position of the PSU. I've got the double hard drive bay right over here, and I've got my RM850X PSU right here. As you can see, it makes it very cramped, and again, I could not solidly mount this hard drive case because there's a lack of space. And then I decided to put it in the scoop, and just in case I don't have air conditioning, so if in the summer it turns out to be too hot for my computer, I'll be able to put an AIO in here without any hassles. And this is the shunt that connects the rear fans, if you get them, and allows them to blow onto the motherboard through the hole over here. One thing I don't like is these 2 holes here for cabling. They actually, number one, the rubber gasketing that they have in here it's very easily pushed out of the space that it's in, so it's hard to keep it in place when you're cabling and awkward to get it back into place. You may want to just remove them if you don't mind having the holes exposed. Also, the other problem I don't like about it is that the cables going through actually block some of the shunt, air shunt through here, so it decreases airflow. And that is pretty much it. So if you don't use the scoop down there, you can theoretically have your PSU, and you can mount. There are 3 positions for the hard disk drive case. You can mount it to the far left, which would be like way over here. So there'd be plenty of space to access your power supply unit. I'm not looking forward to having to deal with that until after I've removed that case, once I'm done with the hard disk drive that I've got down there for backups. So that's what it looks like in the backside. And there are all these like tie places you can use with a cable tie or twist tie to tie down cables that you don't need to have in the cabling system with the Velcro ties. There are lots and lots of Velcro straps. Now, I wanted to point out that when you get this, all the hardware, the screws and standoff and all that stuff are hidden in a cardboard box inside of the hard disk drive case. So I was a little bit confused about that when I was trying to find that. All right, now I'm going to run over the pros and cons. It might be a little bit repetitive based on what I've already told you, but hold on. So, first of all, it's very spacious. Great if you plan to add on things in the future. It can accept anywhere from ITX up to EATX motherboards. You may have to relocate the lower motherboard spacers for micro and mini ATX motherboards, as the default configuration is for ATX. It does ship with 3 hydrodynamic Corsair 120mm RGB fans. They're not the best fans according to Corsair themselves. They have maglev or magnetic levitation fans that are even better. And of course, Corsair customer support will definitely recommend those to you. But these are good enough to start out with. I would suggest taking 2 of the fans, putting them on the front, and put the third one the 2 fans on the front, sucking air in, and take a third one, put it on top or on the back, and pushing air out. Let's see. The case. It comes with the 320mm RGB fans. They're pre-installed in the front and connect to the power management and RGB controller cards, which are on the rear of the motherboard tray. The case can hold a maximum of 10 120mm fans, or a combination of 4 120mm and 4 140mm fans. between all the locations for fans. It's got good airflow with 3 fan ports in front, 3 on top, 3 on the side, and 1 on the bottom, or 2, 2, 3, and 1, depending on what size fans you're using. Plus, there is also an intake space underneath the power supply on the bottom of the case. The side and bottom have removable fine mesh filtering. The top and front have removable medium mesh filtering, and the back has only built-in mesh preventing access by rodents and large insects. The bottom filter is loosely mounted, so you may let some dust into the PSU. If you really need supreme airflow, get a full mesh case instead of glass side panels. Front and top fan areas can hold 360 millimeter AIO coolers. I strongly recommend you place the case on a hard, flat surface instead of carpeting to avoid clogging, especially the PSU, since the intake for the air is there, and the carpeting is definitely going to block it off. And if it doesn't block it off, it's going to be a great source of dust that will block up and damage your PSU ultimately. And give a few inches of space near every fan port to reduce the risk of overheating and maximizing airflow. The case is spacious enough that after installing the CPU, you can probably install everything with the motherboard mounted inside, although some things will be easier to accomplish outside the case. As I said, if you've got a large air tower cooler for your CPU, and it has a back plate that goes on the back side of the motherboard case itself, you're going to need to install the CPU and the tower cooler before you mount this in the case. For those who want to waste money on RGB, you can add RGB strips and more RGB fans. The existing cores support a total of 6 fans, so you have to buy another pair of cores to support the total possible of 10 to 12 fans. The 2 cables off the cores of the large plugs, did I say 10 to 12? I think 8 to 10 is actually correct. Sorry about that. And the 2 cables off the cores with the large plugs need to be connected to your PSU via SATA power cables, and this is not documented in the manual or on the website. The glass panels on the front, top, and sides increase view of the stickers and RGBs if you care about that crap. And also the top and front glass panels are removable with mesh below them held in place with magnetic strips. The power supply unit and hard disk drive case are concealed in the bottom, helping to conceal cables, and the PSU area is spacious. Very good cabling system, including many extra Velcro buckling straps and 2 channels. Plus, there are places in the case to use cable ties and twist ties where the straps can't be used. It includes a 2-bay hard disk drive case that has 3 placement positions, I should say, in the bottom of the case. There are also 3 2.5-inch SATA card SSD, or solid state SSD, sorry, not SDD, solid state drive mounting positions included in the rear. And you can also take 2 of those and you can mount them on the top part of the case, the area that conceals the power supply and hard disk drive case, which would, of course, then somewhat reduce the airflow through that mesh. But it would allow you to take any kind of a 2.5-inch SSD for SATA that's got RGBs on it, for example, and allow you to put them in a place where people can see the pretty lights on that, as if that has any value as far other than visual. It does not. It just wastes electricity, and it doesn't do anything for you because you're going to be looking at your computer screen all the time. You're not really going to need to look at the RGBs. Let's see, double door construction for behind the motherboard with a glass and filter outer door and a metal inner door concealing the power supply unit, the hard disk drive case, cabling, and so on in the rear area. The metal door is easily removable from the hinges because the hinges are just pins up, and you just lift it up and turn it, lift it up, take it off. And let's see, the front glass door allows full view of the motherboard and other frontal components. The front and rear glass doors are held in place with a tab and slot construction and 2 thumb screws for quick access. All slot card ports are covered with coarse mesh slot covers that allow for additional airflow. There are lots of cabling holes that connect front and back areas. 2 holes on the side of the motherboard have rubber gaskets that can easily be removed if needed. Cons: I would have greatly preferred a non-RGB version of this or similar case. I was not happy sometimes with customer support. Because sometimes they were trying to upsell me to get something more expensive to add on instead of telling me the truth. Like, for example, I was talking about the AIO coolers. They said, oh, there's no way you're going to be able to do a tower cooler with your configuration and lack of air conditioning. You're going to have to get an AIO cooler. And they were trying to upsell me on getting the command core and all this other crap that I don't actually need and is not required. Also the manual sucks. It's in multiple, like a dozen different languages, I believe, but it's really poor. I mean, there's minimal wording. There's minimal, the diagrams that are supposed to guide you in installation of different things often don't provide enough information, and they're also quite small. So really, the manual is almost useless. And the website, frankly, isn't much better. Let's see, what else? In fact, I couldn't even find a Corsair installation video for this case, which is part of the reason that I made this video. Actually, I made a separate video showing how I installed everything into my case. Let's see. Aside from them trying to upsell me at Corsair Tech Support, they also try to convince me that only their IQ software would be able to support the fans, the CPU, the PSU, and other compatible hardware like an AIO cooler. Sometimes they don't know what they're talking about too. Sometimes they had to research it. And I understand there are lots of products that Corsair sells, so it's hard to know about all of them and hard to have mastery of all of them. So I give them some slack on that. The agent I talked to about getting my RGB fans working didn't actually know what he was talking about. So when I set it up, I never worked with this kind of a system before because I don't buy RGB crap. But it had these cores there, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what controls them. So and the fans were already plugged into the PWM and the RGB cores, and I thought, okay, it's ready to go. But then I turned on the computer, on my son's computer and my computer, the fans weren't working. So I called them up and I said, look, what's going on here? The fans aren't turning on at all. And the guy was like, well, I don't know. And so eventually, between the two of us, we realized that I did not need the command core, which I had previously been told I needed by this guy. And also that each core had 2 cables coming off of it. One that goes to the motherboard and the other ones that connect to SATA cabling from the power supply. And eventually we realized I have to have a SATA cable from my power supply to power the 2 cores. And once I got that done, which wasn't documented again, I was very happy to be able to use it. Now, I haven't been able to turn off the darn RGBs on the fans, but gosh, what a surprise. I guess I'm going to have some software. And there are well over a dozen other software alternatives for controlling the various parts of your computer, monitoring and adjusting colors and all that crap. So you don't need the IQ software. In fact, you don't need the IQ line in order to be able to do that. I would have preferred to have gotten something that had a lot more airflow and a lot less of the useless doodads like RGBs. And I would have preferred magnetic levitation fans, Corsair. Okay, so let's see. The horizontal graphics card slot, which is given 2 slots near the front of the case, very close to the front the side glass panel, cannot be used for most graphics cards because the space is inadequate for airflow from the fans. It's too close to the glass. It's like there's this much space or so between the fans on the front of the graphics card and that glass panel. So unless you want to run your computer with the glass door off, which I can't do because I've got a cat and he would short out the whole thing, or you don't mind risking having rodents getting in there and chewing on cables and shorting it all out and stuff like that, you can't put the graphics card there unless it's a blower style where it uses the slots in the outside of the case to blow hot air out or suck hot air in and blow it into the case so it can be blown out elsewhere, which obviously may have some problems. But if it's facing if the fans are facing that glass panel, don't mount it there. In addition, my particular XFX graphics card is so large it has a support bar running from the thumb screws for the slots, for 4 slots, to the other end of the card to support it. And therefore, it will not fit into the 2-slot location of the front slots that have the card going horizontally, and then you run a cable from the fingers and then to the motherboard connector slot. So if I cannot use the slot for I cannot use the slot. If you get the right cable card, you probably could. Oh, and the card you would need to connect your motherboard to your graphics card is extra. You would have to buy that. So either use those 2 slots for some other kinds of cards that, maybe you got a really cheap motherboard because you wanted to have like custom everything else. So you could use those 2 slots for maybe something else. Or just don't use them at all. Or again, get a graphics card with a blower type fan that uses that slot hole for exhaust. And if you do put the graphics card there, make sure that there is a support column that goes from the bottom of the graphics card to the base of the case. So it's fully supported on the far end instead of slowly sagging and breaking. All right, what else? Okay. The PSU, or power supply unit, if you don't know what that means, is hidden behind a partition at the bottom of the case, sharing space with both the hard disk drive case and the scoop modification for a large frontal AIL or all-in-one cooler if you use that. So if you don't use that scoop and because you don't have a large cooler that has to fit in that space, you'll have more space to be able to house your hard disk drive case there. But otherwise, you will be able to put the hard disk drive case in there, but you probably won't be able to screw it into place. And the cabling from the PSU is going to become, it's going to be competing for space in there with that hard disk drive case, and it's frustrating. So it makes cabling for power difficult, especially if you have, and I do not recommend it, a non-modular power supply unit. If you're going to buy this case and you're going to have an AIO cooler that's large, like a 360 millimeter one, which will fit either on the top or on the front, you're definitely, if you're going to put it on the front, you're definitely going to have to use that scoop at the bottom, and then you're going to have to absolutely have a semi or fully modulated power supply unit, or you're not going to be able to fit all those damn cables into that space. And again, this is also going to restrict your options as far as cabling, which direction you can send cables from the back to the front. It does ship with the 3 RGB fans, but there's no option to get non-RGB fans or to upgrade to the maglev fans, or nothing. You can't click a little thing and say, hey, this is what I want. Not even on the Corsair website. And there are no options to have it shipped with extra fans installed either, or to have the command core added on to the price, which you don't actually need. But if you're going to be getting additional fans, more than 6, you will need to add on a command core to manage the rest of those fans. The case could have had better airflow if the removable mesh filters were durable enough to keep out rodents and the top and front glass panels were absent, but they can be removed. So you have some choices. You can keep those glass panels in place on the top and on the front, or you can take them off, assuming that there are no rodents that are going to be chewing through that mesh. But still, if you've got rodents, they're going to get past the glass panels anyway and chew up that mesh no matter what, because it's just plastic. The power management fan card is not mounted on the accessory tray, which it should be, because it wasn't designed for that. The tray, I mean. It's only got the RGB module on it. There are other holes in the tray, but their purpose is unknown. I have no idea, and the manual certainly doesn't explain that, nor does the website. The IQ fan and RGB command cord doesn't, as I said, doesn't come with the case. It's sold separately. When you have a lot of cabling in the rear, it's difficult to get the metal door to stay closed. I had to add a neodymium magnet to keep it in place. I'm not looking forward to the possibility of fitting in the cabling for an AIO cooler. Coarse mesh is large enough for ants, bed bugs, small cockroaches, and other insects. So that would be all of the port slot covers and the mesh for the exit port for the last fan on the back. And there's also some mesh above that position of that one fan slot there, or point there. So those are all entry points for small insects. The motherboard mounting area cannot be removed from the case. It can't be slid out so you can mount. It cannot be rotated, and there's no way it's fixed in position. Two of the cabling holes that I pointed out earlier that have the flimsy rubber gaskets that pop out, and they pop out of their positions far too easily, and it makes it hard to get the cables through them. And then once you've got the cables in place, it makes it hard for you to reseat the the gaskets, because I guess the edges, the slot and the rubber is too shallow, so it's hard to get them back in. You can, but it's difficult. And these two holes are positioned in the venting area, where a panel both shunts air from the rear fan area and conceals the two holes. Using the two holes is unavoidable, resulting in decreased airflow through that shunt area. So you can still use it, but it's going to be a bit of a problem. Now, keep in mind that area where those three fans are, it's protected by a fine mesh, medium, kind of a medium mesh filter on it, is for pulling air in from the outside and blowing it against across the motherboard, thereby cooling it even further. Let's see. I think overall this is an excellent case, especially if you can get a deep discount like I did on Newegg. If you're into useless aesthetics, RGBs, LEDs, and stickers, or you're just staring proudly at your computer innards instead of using them, this is a great choice, as are many other decoratively oriented cases. Corsair definitely offers quality products, and this is no exception. Really good airflow and cabling and other things make this a great choice for those who want to show off their computer and add on things to the computer. So I give it a thumbs up. I would give it, out of 10 stars, I'd probably give it an 8. Customer support was very patient with me and fairly knowledgeable, but I hated the upselling, and I hated that sometimes they couldn't answer my questions and I had to help them figure things out. So I'll give customer support a 7, but definitely better than some of the other companies I've called to get help. So, but that's another video. That's it for me. Thanks for watching this review, and I hope you have a great day.